Greetings, YouTube. First, a couple of things I wanted to show off. My ghetto camera float, which actually does function, and it was incredibly cheap, which is awesome, because I'm a cheap individual. And I got a new flashlight. This is designed to look like a retro classic flashlight from the 50s, but it is an LED. It's even got the intermittent style, so you can do Morse code. I got it for nothing. It was a gift from my father. I have no idea where he got it from. Chinese. Not all that expensive. I got an email yesterday, or a PM rather, someone asking me about improvised weapons and custom weapons. Now, we never used a whole lot of improvised weapons in my gaming career. Back in first edition, we had the golf bag of swords, so everybody always had something to smack somebody else with, so there was never a shortage of weapons around. And in second edition, everybody seemed to be armed. I can't remember many times when they had been reduced to not having anything around. It would usually befall fisticuffs if nothing was around. We very rarely seemed to ever turn to improvised weapons. Though I remember GMing something, it might have been first edition, it could have been second edition, I don't remember which, where the characters actually didn't have a weapon that would harm gargoyles. And one of the gargoyles was killed by spells. And one of the players had a fighter, and the fighter had a storm giant strength belt, so a very strong individual. And he's like, he can't hurt these things. None of his weapons would harm them. This is back before damage reduction, remember. Before you had, magical things that would get through damage reduction. So he asks me, will a gargoyle hurt a gargoyle? I'm like, sure. So he picks the gargoyle up and starts to beat the other gargoyles to death with it. It's inspired, and it worked quite well. We also had a non-player character once that in a major melee was going on, he picked up a bucket, and I think the orcs were attacking us, and he smacks one of the orcs, and rolls a 20, gets max damage, and kills the orc. And so continues to swing the bucket, violently around, trying to knock some orc heads together, kind of thing. And he killed like 3 or 4 of them in the battle, and there was a lot more than that. He was being played by a player character, by a player, but he was like a follower of some variety. And from that point on, the character carried the bucket everywhere and used it as his only weapon. It had nothing magical about it. It was just his bucket. I always kind of thought that was funny. But other than that, there weren't a whole lot of improvised weapons. Everybody threw halflings. That's kind of almost a trope in and of itself. Chucking halflings became tired. But other than that, it wasn't a big thing. I suppose if someone wanted to really become good at improvised weapons, I'd let them. I have no problem with that. I just think it's just so much more efficient to have real weapons. They're ubiquitous in fantasy games. They're ubiquitous in the real world. I got them all over my walls and in my closet, and I got knives lying everywhere. Finding weapons is not hard to do. So I've never really understood the attraction to the whole improvised weapon thing, unless maybe you're going to do the whole Three Musketeers, tankards or chairs or candelabras or something like that. I guess if you want to do that, go ahead. Not my cup of tea. But the other question a person asked me was about custom weapons. Now, he mentioned the dire flail of hamsters. Now, dire flails of themselves are stupid. They are one of the best possible ways you can smack yourself in the back of the skull. Having a shaft with 2 chains with the weights on it, is a way of hurting yourself or your companions to either side of you. It is not a sensible weapon. However, the dire flail's stats are solid. I like them mechanically, so I just changed the description to being a length of chain with weights at the end. Essentially, it's a double meteor hammer. Has the same stats completely, just no shaft in the middle. You just use one in each hand, tripping, looping things, all kinds of stuff. And that works for me. Now, if you wanted to have a dire flail that had hamsters instead of weighted spheres, I suppose you could. The first blow would do like a die 3, the second one would do a die 2, the third would do a 1 point of damage, and then they would be gone because you would have reduced the hamsters to pudding. Now, I see hamsters as evil hellspawn myself, I don't. I despise the little beasts. Give me a nice healthy rat any day. Hamsters are blind and they will bite anything that gets near them. I speak as someone that used to work at a pet store. I have lost track of how many times I had hamsters bite me. But if someone wanted to have a custom weapon in the game, say inspired by an anime they saw or a manga, or something from a third-party book, I have no problem with that. Go ahead, bring it to my table, but I'm going to adjudicate whether I think it's appropriate or whether the stats you're presenting me with me or are going to be acceptable to me, or if you need to have me create them, or you've done them and I have to just edit them and decide if I want to use them or not. But I like player interaction and creativity like that, so I would encourage someone to, if they wanted to have a custom weapon or a weapon, say, from a particular culture that they wanted to say, their culture uses this weapon frequently, so this is why they have it with them, kind of thing. I'm going to put a link in the info bar to my DeviantArt page, which has hundreds of sketches of weird-ass weapons. I spent years sketching strange weapons. Some simply out of my own imagination, some based off things I saw in films, and some had been done on people had made requests. So all of them can be used by people as inspiration for weapons in their fantasy games. Most of them are fantasy related. There aren't many science fiction in there. There are a few. I created the Infinity Arms Corporation specifically for the science fiction weapons I came up with. Infinity Arms, always ready, always armed. I think that was what the tagline was, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So I encourage it. I like it. I would not, however, probably allow someone to have a dire flail of hamsters.